Dragon Ball GT is canon. Or has it always been canon? Hello and welcome to History of Dragon Ball. Today we are looking at the recent resurfacing of some Dragon Ball canon news. I hope you are all doing well today, especially those who are fans of Dragon Ball GT. GT was a series that really didn't quite hit the same beats and levels as Dragon Ball and Z had done in the past. It just could not live up to the legendary history of its predecessors, almost like an unwanted third child. And I say it like that because, although it was Dragon Ball by name, it did not come to our screens in quite the same way. Dragon Ball GT was not an adaptation of a manga produced by Akira Toriyama. It was simply its own sequel original show. Through it, we were introduced to many new things. Some good, some bad.
No, I wish you were a little kid again, then I could really teach you a lesson or two.
And some that were just ugly.
One time, here we go, let's go! Shake, 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 shake!
Toriyama did have some involvement though. He did come up with the Dragon Ball GT name, which he says stands for Grand Tour, in being a reference to the series having its characters travel throughout the universe in the show. As well as that though, he also designed the looks of the main characters too, which does sadly mean yes, he did come up with that moustache. However, Toriyama himself has been quoted as referring to GT as a side story of the original Dragon Ball. That doesn't really make it sound like official sequel, does it? And that has made it all the harder for GT to be accepted when the announcement of Dragon Ball Super also came about, albeit it didn't put the discussion to bed. At the end of Dragon Ball Z, we have a big time jump, where at the end of it we see Goku fighting with Oob, the good reincarnation of Majin Buu at the World Martial Arts Tournament. Then the two end up flying off together to train, so that Goku can turn Oob into Earth's next greatest defender, someone who can look after everyone after he is gone. Well, GT starts with the two of them training, obviously then happening directly after the end of Z, or at least a few years after. However, Super, when that came out, made the unusual decision to start its story in what would be that time jump at the end of Z, in between the defeat of Majin Buu and the World Martial Arts Tournament. Meaning, everything that happens in Super happens before the end of Z, at least up until this point in the manga right now, and without anyone saying that the end of Z is no longer canon either. This does many things to hinder Super, to be fair, which is a subject for its own video, but surely then it makes it obvious that both can still be canon with no problems. Well, in a way yes, but also it does make people question the stakes of Super, in knowing that, in the end, they do survive anyway because we've seen them after the fact. And also, in what seems to be another important thing to a lot of people, it brings in many questions about power scaling and how on earth their transformations work. I have already released a video on which is more powerful between Super Saiyan 4 and Super Saiyan Blue if you are interested in something more closely focused on that subject as well. So why now are people suddenly saying that Dragon Ball GT is in fact canon and not just some fan-made side story like it has been labelled in the past? The Dragon Ball fandom can never quite come to the agreement on if it really is fully canon or not, but maybe we have finally had some official answers. Well, none other than Shueisha, the company behind publishing the likes of Jump magazine, put out a timeline. An official timeline. Or at least they did about 5 years ago, but only just now is it coming back to the front of people's minds. And by the way, this is all thanks to the Twitter page DBGT Legacy. So if you do like your Dragon Ball GT, a great page to follow. But anyway, a timeline for the entire franchise's story was shown back at this 2017 event called Dragon Ball Tenkaichi Budosai, an event in Japan that is dedicated to Dragon Ball, with it clearly also including the events of GT, clearly showing Super Android 17 and of course Super Saiyan 4 Goku. So, if it is Shueisha themselves, the official publisher of the manga who drew this up, then surely this points to that every series, Dragon Ball, Z, Super, and GT are there to be accepted. Like I said, this is of course possible at this time because in the manga we have seen Oob as a young child quite recently, and we know GT does not take place until he is older. So they definitely have not gone past the end of Z yet in Super, meaning everything does still line up in terms of the years that they label them with. It is just an issue with something like transformations that really make people question what is going on. Obviously, in GT, there is no hint to any gods like Beerus, angels like Whis, other universes, or transformations like Super Saiyan God, Blue, Ultra Instinct, or Ultra Ego, which of course could not be possible with GT being made first, but they would be pretty big deals if they did exist within that story too. Something else that helps back up that this was not just some mistake though. Well, this was not the first time that the information has officially been published in this way. If we go back even further now, to 2013, the year that Dragon Ball Z Battle of Gods movie was released in theaters, there was another publication called Chusenchu 4 Dragon Ball Super Encyclopedia that used the exact same timeline. But does that really prove anything? When Battle of Gods was released, it was labelled as a Dragon Ball Z movie, not Super, and at that time they had not even officially decided that they were going to release a new series at all. At that point, GT still had no issues with being widely regarded as canon. Yes, we had seen the Super Saiyan God, but it was also accepted that maybe Goku couldn't just tap into this after this one instance. However, showing a timeline from that year does not particularly help us when so much has changed since. And since they used the exact same timeline for the 2017 exhibit, they may have simply just repurposed older artwork or timeline work rather than creating something new again. After all, even though you can see the Dragon Ball Super logo on this exhibit, it does not seem to show anything outside of the Battle of Gods movie. And well, Super has covered a lot of ground since then. So really, what is all this telling us at the end of the day? Akira Toriyama, the creator of Dragon Ball, has said GT is like a side story for Dragon Ball. It is not necessarily the main story for our Saiyan warriors. Many fans have instead thought, with the way that Super has gone now as well, that GT is simply one of either. Another universe that we have not seen, maybe one of the ones that has been erased in the past because maybe it was too close to the one that we know and this is something that they couldn't leave. Or instead, and perhaps more accepted, is that it is just simply an alternate timeline. We know this idea works in Dragon Ball. We have had great stories coming from future Trunks, adventures with the same characters we know took place in his timeline, but nothing being quite the same as we know it. So perhaps we could comfortably accept that Super Saiyan 4 is just that alternate timeline, maybe where Goku never met Beerus, or at least even if the Battle of Gods movie happened, the time when he was never given the chance to do any training under any gods or angels. That way it leaves both open to be accepted and yes, technically still be canon both ways. And yet it still lets everyone have their power discussion as well between the likes of Blue and 4. You never know. Maybe if they even retcon the name to Dragon Ball AT, alternate timeline, then people may more widely accept it. At the end of the day, unless we ever get an official statement from Toriyama or Shueisha, fans are more than welcome to consider Dragon Ball GT's story as part of the franchise's canon. But at the same time, if you would prefer to ignore it completely, then nobody can say you are wrong either. All I want as a fan is for everyone to enjoy Dragon Ball, whether that is just for the original series, the original manga, or anything and everything that has come since those issues or episode 1s. Dragon Ball is just a great world with a brilliant fandom and an awesome place to escape into to simply have a good time, whether that is Dragon Ball, Z, GT, or Super. So with that, Thank you for spending just some of your time with me today. Please do consider hitting that subscribe button, liking the video, and leaving a comment on here to help me with that YouTube algorithm. I am so close to hitting that 10,000 subscriber goal, and if you can push me over it, I would absolutely love every single one of you. And so with that, I will see you next time on History of Dragon Ball.